Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort. Good to be with you on another edition of the world's leading transit executive podcast, heard in over 100 countries. Transit Unplugged News and Views this week with our special newsmaker interview with Mike Bagshaw, who I recently got the chance to sit down with in London. Mike is the Chief Operating Officer of MTR UK, the operating company that has been made famous for their operations of transit in Hong Kong, and now they're operating the new Elizabeth line in London for TfL. We talk all about it on this week's newsmaker interview. We also have a lot of headline news this week from the industry, and we'll have our normal contributors of Elea and Mike as well on this episode of Transit Unplugged News and Views. Well, headline Washington, D.C. This last week, the Washington, D.C. Council of the Government Council for the city voted 13-0 unanimously to waive fares for Metro bus trips that originate in the District of Columbia. The council vote clears the way for a follow-up formality vote to finalize the approval. Under the plan, free Metro bus rides would begin on July 1st, 2023. The council member Charles Allen said today's vote on this transformational bill shows the district is ready to be a national leader in the future of public transit. Last week, Council President Phil Mendelson said he'd bring up the bill for a vote, and he did, and it passed unanimously. Under the plan, the D.C. government, one of the four agencies that help fund WMATA, which includes the federal government, Virginia, Maryland, and D.C., under this plan, the D.C. government would pay Metro, WMATA, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, $42 million annually, which would make the bus rides free inside the nation's capital. Council members had originally wanted to give D.C. residents $100 a month to ride Metro Rail, but that idea appears to be shelved for now. So big news coming out of Washington, D.C., and we'll see when it finally is implemented. We'll bring you updates on how that could impact ridership in the district. Lots of news with CEOs lately in the industry. Two major CEOs have announced their resignation in the last week or so. Terry White, the CEO of King County Metro in Seattle, and Alex Wiggins, the CEO of New Orleans Regional Transit Authority. Both of them wrote chapters in my book, Conversations on Equity and Inclusion in Public Transportation. As a matter of fact, Alex Wiggins was the opening chapter, and Terry White was a summary chapter. Both gentlemen announcing this week that they're retiring. Terry White is retiring as King County Metro General Manager at the end of this year. He joined King County Metro in 1987 as a customer service specialist, and he held 13 positions prior to becoming general manager. The agency has nominated Deputy General Manager Michelle Allison to lead the agency after White's retirement. Dow Constantine, the King County Metro executive, said, "On behalf of the people of King County, I want to thank Terry White for over 35 years of exemplary service, and especially for leading Metro through the unprecedented challenges of the pandemic." And in 2022, this last year, King County was recognized by the Federal Transit Administration as the country's most equitable transit agency in tackling climate change. The agency also hosted the flagship conference for the American Public Transportation Association, which we were able to attend here on the podcast, and we also did a book signing that included Terry and Alex at the Vontas booth on the trade show floor. I talked to Terry this week, and he said it was always his plan to retire this year, and he is excited about his future, and he received numerous accolades for his time of service there. We thank him for his service to our industry and wish him the very best in whatever life brings him next. We also want to cover the retirement of Alex Wiggins. He has served as New Orleans Regional Transit Authority CEO since July 2019. He, too, will retire on December 31st, 2022, after a 38 career in the transit industry. He's retiring from the RTA. He may not be retiring from our industry. Wiggins was New Orleans RTA's first publicly appointed CEO since it was formed in 1979 and helped guide the authority through its move to bring management of its rail and bus operations in-house. The authority has achieved numerous goals. They implemented a simplified fare structure, launched a pilot on demand program for its flex services under Wiggins' leadership. They won grants to begin to transition to zero-emission buses and implemented a network redesign to improve connectivity to neighboring parishes. Wiggins said, "Thank you to the RTA board, staff, and riders for trusting me to lead our incredible staff to help build the world-class transit system New Orleanians deserve. I'm proud of our team's many accomplishments, including our response to Hurricane Ida, the stabilization of the passenger ferry service, breaking ground on the Canal Street Ferry Terminal, and initiating the bus rapid transit study, which will significantly enhance regional connections in the region." Wiggins is a veteran of the United States Army, the Air Force Reserve, and the Seattle Police Department, and has a long history in transit as well. He served as a City of Seattle Strategic Advisor for Light Rail and Chief of Staff at the Seattle Department of Transportation before moving to North County Transit District to serve as Chief Administrative Officer. He also served as Deputy Executive Director of Chicago Region's Metra, Vice President of Transit Safety and Security, and Chief System Security and Law Enforcement Division at LA Metro. Mark Raymond Jr., the New Orleans RTA Board Chairman, said, "The RTA Board of Commissioners would like to thank Alex Z. Wiggins, who joined the RTA at a pivotal time in the agency's history. His New Orleans roots and vast transit experience gleaned from transit properties in Seattle, Chicago, and Southern California uniquely positioned him to lead the agency through its transition." And so congratulations to him, and also congratulations to Lona Edward Hankins, who will serve as interim CEO until the RTA Board of Commissioners permanently fills the role. She has served as Deputy CEO for Planning and Infrastructure since December of 2019. So big changes in the industry from two of our leading transit chief executive officers. On the flip side, a new head of the Federal Highway Administration has just been confirmed, and that is a friend of ours here on the program, Shailene Batt. The United States Department of Transportation announced that he has been confirmed by the Senate as the 21st Administrator of the Federal Highway Administration. He's the first person of Indian descent in his role, and he will lead the Federal Highway Administration in administering more than $350 billion as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Prior to his confirmation, Mr. Batt served as Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, a Cabinet Secretary of the Delaware Department of Transportation, and FHWA Associate Administrator for Policy and Government Affairs during the Obama administration. And Secretary Pete Buttigieg of the U.S. Department of Transportation said, "From his leadership of the Colorado and Delaware Departments of Transportation to his work in the private sector to his service at FHWA during the Obama administration, Mr. Batt brings a wealth of transportation experience to the U.S. DOT. He's also a friend of public mobility and is going to take over now as the official administrator of the Federal Highway Administration." So that's a look of headline news around our industry. Thanks for all those folks for the service they have provided to our industry. And now stay tuned for our Newsmaker interview with Mike Bagshaw, Chief Operating Officer of MTR UK, on this episode of Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort with Mike Bagshaw, Chief Operating Officer of MTR UK. We're talking from London. Mike, thanks so much for being a guest on the show today.
Good afternoon, Paul.
Yeah. So, Mike, tell us a little bit. Let's open up. Talk a little bit about MTR, the company you work with, what you guys do. You're really famous for what you're doing in Hong Kong, and also for what you're doing here in the UK, because you just did something amazing this week. What did you do?
Absolutely. So what we did this week is effectively we joined up the Elizabeth line. So we joined up the three parts of the Elizabeth line this Sunday, 6th of November, and we made it one end-to-end railway.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, so we'll talk more about that in a minute. But today we're going to be talking about rail and some of the things MTR is doing around the world and some of the concepts that I think people can learn from around the world. Tell us a little about yourself, Mike. You've got a fascinating background.
So I've got a long career in the rail industry now, some sort of 32 years. So I started back in 89 in the frontline roles, answering telephones from British Rail as it was in the day then. Worked in ticket offices, worked through sort of customer relations type roles. So my first sort of meaty experience was with Chiltern Railways at the early days of privatisation, when there was a lot of innovation, a lot of great ideas to run more services, build new track, build new stations, launch really competitive fares. So I spent, the early part of my management career in Chiltern Railways, spent a little bit of time with the Strategic Rail Authority. I then moved to Wales, and I was commercial director for Arriva Trains Wales for a while. So that was a really exciting opportunity, working with the Welsh government and really developing the railway system there. And I joined MTR in 2016, initially in a bidding role, and then got very closely involved with the Elizabeth line, particularly planning the staged opening plan and getting, making sure we had all the foundations in place to run a really high-performing railway. And my role as COO now is wider, so I have some operational oversight across our UK activities.
Very good. So you're Chief Operating Officer of MTR UK. Where else do you so you do the Elizabeth line. Tell us what you do there, and then tell us a little bit more about what the expanse of what you do here in the UK.
So we are the operator for the Elizabeth line on behalf of TfL. So essentially we run the trains, we provide the staff, including the drivers and the customer-facing staff.
Okay, and tell us what that is, the Elizabeth line, for people around the world that may not be familiar. It's one of the coolest things that's happened in transit in the last year.
So it's a huge project. The Elizabeth line is, the end result of a £20 billion railway project. So it's a tunnel that runs under London from Paddington through to Abbey Wood, and it connects into the National Rail network, linking trains through from Reading, from Heathrow Airport, through underneath central London, through to Abbey Wood, via Canary Wharf, and Stratford in East London through to Shenfield.
And so it's named after
Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, and were you there when she was there?
I was, and it was a great honour. I mean, none of us knew she was going to, come to the opening of the Elizabeth line. So it was a fantastic day when the Queen turned up to open the Elizabeth line.
Yeah, one of the last big events she did.
Absolutely. So it was a real honour that she was there to open the line.
So Andy Byford was there at that time, right?
He was indeed.
Yeah,
yes,
so I remember Andy's a good friend of ours in the show, has been on here twice. And Mark Wilde, what was his role? He kind of got it all back and going, right?
Absolutely. Yes, so Mark Wilder had absolutely critical role at leading the Crossrail project and basically finishing Crossrail, getting the tunnel open so that we could run the train service that we're running today.
So that was the TfL, the government, and then they contracted out to your company to actually run it day to day.
Absolutely.
And how long do you have a long contract for that?
So our contract runs for another 2 years. We just recently had an extension so that we can really oversee the final stages of the Elizabeth line and just cement that really high performing railway. So.
And it's running now. So are you seeing? You told me you rode it today. I mean, is ridership good or what's happening?
Ridership's good. The trains are really busy. We're carrying sort of upwards of 250,000 passengers a day. And it's rising all the time. So the trains are busy, and of course because we've linked it up this week. Now, people that are now coming in from Heathrow, for example, no longer need to change at Paddington. If they're coming into central London, they can travel straight through to Bond Street, Tottenham Court Road, Farringdon, Liverpool Street in the city, all the way through to Canary Wharf. So, and likewise in the east, passengers coming in from stations such as Romford, Ilford, no longer need to change it at Liverpool Street. They can travel straight through.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Straight through train to Paddington. So it's the connectivity that the Elizabeth line has delivered is really, really fantastic.
And it comes just in time, really, right? So we're coming out of the pandemic when ridership has been down. We give people a convenient option, fast, clean, beautiful. I saw the stations. I was watching them. Mark Wilde was posting, on LinkedIn as each station opened up. I mean, beautiful.
The stations are absolutely fantastic. I think people are amazed by how great the stations are.
Yeah.
You can see people filming them as come down the escalators,
they're gleaming, right?
They're absolutely gleaming and they're all individual as well. They've all got sort of individual, styles that are reflective of the areas that they serve.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that, at least in the U.S., a lot of this push toward the lowest bid on everything. We lose the grandeur that you see in some other transit systems in Europe,
Yeah, I don't think you can be failed to be impressed by the architecture on the Elizabeth line stations. They're absolutely fantastic.
Well, that's wonderful, and you're responsible as COO for the running every day. And what else do you all do here in the UK?
So we're also involved with South Western Railway. We're a 30% shareholder of South Western Railway, along with First Group. We're also in infrastructure, so we are delivering a number of infrastructure projects on behalf of TfL currently. We've been involved in projects such as Liverpool Street platform extensions, where we were able to complete that important piece of work at a much lower cost and with less disruption than would otherwise have been the case. So, using our expertise as a train operator and an infrastructure delivery partner is absolutely key. And the other part of our business is property, and particularly rail-related property. So, as people may know, the in Hong Kong, essentially, the railway is paid for by the shopping malls and the apartment blocks that sit over and above the stations. We're currently seeing if we can replicate that model in the UK. So, for example, we are consulting on a scheme to redevelop Liverpool Street Station at the moment, which will effectively mean that the Network Rail are able to gain a brand new concourse, which won't need any public money, because we'll be building a new hotel and an office block above the station. So that will effectively fund a brand new station concourse with level access and 3 times the size that it currently is.
That's something. Yeah, I first became familiar with your company through the work they do in Hong Kong. We were studying it in the U.S. about how. So tell us a little bit more about that. You call that the Property Plus model?
Property Plus model, yeah. I mean, if you've been to Hong Kong, you will, most of the stations sit underneath a shopping mall or another development, essentially. And the property values in Hong Kong are such that the value of that property development can fund the operating of the network and also the extensions of the network as well. So, new lines, new stations, it's a model that works without being dependent on public money.
That's amazing. So do you all own that property? You'll buy a hunk of land, then develop a shopping center?
MTR in Hong Kong will buy the land, will develop the area, and then build the new railways.
That's amazing. And then that covers the operating and capital cost?
Absolutely. So the model does work in areas where you've got sort of high property value.
Right.
So particularly central London, I think the model can work. It can't be replicated everywhere, because you do have to have areas where where land values and property values are high. But we're certainly keen to see with public money being so tight at the moment, can we deliver some real improvements for passengers without asking the government for any money at all?
And the UK is famous for that. I mean, outside of London, the franchise model where they're doing it here, but everywhere else, that's kind of the way things have operated, right? For bus services, especially. Bus companies like Arriva, maybe you used to work for, or Tower Transit. I met with them one time, and the first group, they would just decide on a route, run it by the local government, and then run it, right? Without subsidy.
Absolutely.
That's very unique. America doesn't do things like that.
No, absolutely. And, and I think with public money being, tight at the moment, the more we can do without, government subsidy or less government subsidy, the better.
Now, on the Elizabeth line, that probably is all subsidized and everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Elizabeth line is, is funded by Transport for London. We're a concession. We operate the trains, we provide the drivers, etc. But the revenue and the cost is borne by TfL.
Yeah. Are you seeing where else does MTR operate? I mean, just give me a little bit about the company itself. Yeah.
So we operate in Sweden. We have we're quite a sizable operation in Stockholm. We operate the main metro system in Sweden, in Stockholm. 2 commuter operations and an open access operation between Stockholm and Gothenburg. So a major operator in Stockholm. We also operate the Melbourne and the Sydney metro systems in Australia. We operate in mainland China, and obviously a major operation in Hong Kong as well.
Wow, what do you do in China?
We run some of the metro systems in China. I don't know the details of them, but
that's all right. Yeah. That's interesting. So what are some of the hot trends coming from the rail industry right now? You and I were talking ahead of time about some of the digital processes that are happening and tying it all together.
Well, I think that the key for us has been to make sure the Elizabeth line is a punctual service that customers can rely on.
Yes.
So we've used our sort of digital twin, our techniques to model timetables to really test the timetables for the Elizabeth line before they actually are launched in passenger service. So the timetables have been modelled, refined, remodeled, refined again. So the result for the passenger is, we give them the most reliable service that we possibly can. So that investment in the digital technology to do that modelling has been really key. And we're now trying to, extend that investment to how we, can manage the service in a real-time way so that we can recover from any operational incidents more quickly. So that's absolutely key for us as well. Certainly our investment in digital technology really paid off this week when we were able to, we had some strikes planned for this week.
That's right. There was supposed to be rail strikes.
And all the rosters and everything was planned around rail strikes. And then they were called off. And using our digital processes, we're able to get the up-to-date information over to Network Rail so we could change the systems and replan our services really quickly. And we are probably one of only a few operators that managed to run a full service this week because we were able to reinstate our services following the cancellations of the strike. So it does show that sort of investment in the right technology, the right systems does pay off when you're delivering services to passengers.
Now, does the Elizabeth line operate on headway management or time point management?
So both.
Okay.
So it is effectively a timetable service on the east and the west, and it's a headway service in the core operating section. So, we'll be running, let's say, 2.5-minute intervals in the core operating section. And then out on the west, it'll be, 4 trains an hour to Heathrow, 2 trains an hour to Reading. So a mixture of both, which is a really unique characteristic for this railway.
Were you responsible for procuring the vehicles as well?
TfL procured them,
yeah. And what type of vehicles are they, do you know?
So we have, they're Alstom Class 345s.
Okay, very good. And I'm sure are they electric?
They're electric, and they transition between 3 different signalling systems. So they're quite a complicated train to work with all the different software that's the Elizabeth line. Because we have different signalling systems on the east side of the route and the west. And when we go into the central operating section, it's automatic train operation.
That's amazing. I'm sure you have a big operations control center that probably looks like something out of Star Trek.
We do, yeah. We have our control center is based at Romford, and as you can imagine, there's all kinds of screens, all kinds of technology there to make sure that we're controlling the service in the best way possible, and to respond to the inevitable operational issues that crop up throughout the day.
Yeah. Is there anything else on the kind of the technology side or lessons learned during COVID from rail operations that you can share with us?
I think COVID was obviously a challenging time. So, one of the big challenges we we were still, testing and preparing for the Elizabeth line. So things like all the driver training, when we had to try and carry on with driver training but we needed to have, for example, 2 people in a cab.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really challenging, but we managed to find a way around it by getting people to work in operational bubbles, etc., and try and keep the project going. I think, in some cases, the lower passenger numbers during the COVID sort of helped us sort of bring forward some elements of the project that we wouldn't have been able to do if we'd had our full passenger volumes at those times.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a bigger challenge, that the whole industry faced. And, how do we, run a service and deliver a project when, we have to adhere to social distancing and quite a significant number of our staff were off sick at any one time.
Yeah. But coming out of it now, what do you see for the future for rail public transport in general?
So I think I see a positive future. We're seeing a very different trend in passenger, numbers. So commuting has come back, but not quite to its full extent. And there's certainly a concentration of travels towards the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays.
Yeah.
Quieter travelling days on Monday and Friday, but really positively, we're seeing weekends are now busier than they were pre-COVID. So, people are making more leisure journeys and using the railway to go out at the weekend to socialise and to go to events, which is really positive.
It is positive, yeah.
So I think the rail industry is now seeing those trends and is starting to adapt and cater for the new sort of post-COVID travel demand.
Yeah, we're heading into an era where I think, obviously we don't have any experience in this in the past, but it's important. I've heard a lot of CEOs tell me, let's not sell what they're not buying. Mm-hmm. So if we're not riding as much on Mondays and Fridays, maybe the headways get a little longer and use that money to do some more work on nights and weekends.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And I know, some parts of the network, people are saying, well, is it the right time to do, engineering work, for example, at weekends? And should we be doing it on Mondays? I think it's quite a difficult one. I mean, we still do actually carry a lot of people on Mondays as well. Yeah, I'm saying commuter volumes are lower, but people still do need to go to work. So we have to think about those things carefully. There's never a good time to close the railway to do routine maintenance.
Right. Yeah. And you're working with TfL, which is kind of a unique organization, I think, in that they're really part of the city government reporting to the mayor.
Absolutely.
How's that relationship working?
I think the relationship works very well. We have a close working relationship with Transport for London. They are essentially, they're our specifier and, monitor our performance and want to make sure that we are doing the right things. So we've had a really, constructive partnership, I think, in delivering this project and, working together. And, we've been, really trying to sort of help TfL sort of move the Crossrail project on as quickly as possible so that we can get to the end state of the Elizabeth line as soon as possible, which we achieved this week.
So it's over, right? All the new stuff is done
well,
now?
Well, it's not over yet.
Okay, what do you have left to do?
We're still planning to increase the frequency. So this is the first end-to-end timetable. It's certainly not the end of it. We'll be going up to a full 24 train per hour service in May next year.
Okay.
And increasing the number of trains that go to Heathrow from 4 an hour to 6 an hour. And we'll also be reducing the journey time. So there are more improvements planned May next year, and there will be further improvements beyond that.
That's awesome. Well, the next time I come to the UK, I want to get on that train with you and ride it.
Absolutely. Please do. It's a fantastic line.
Thanks, Mike, for being our guest today and sharing with us some of the amazing things you're doing here in London.
Thank you very much, Paul.
It's time for Think Transit. Registration is now open for Think Transit, which runs from April the 2nd through the 5th, 2023, in Nashville, Tennessee at the beautiful Omni Hotel. The Think Transit Conference is where public transit agencies from across North America get together to learn from each other, listen to amazing speakers, and get the latest on public transit technology. We hope to see you there. Register now for early bird pricing at www.trapezegroup.com/thinktransit.
Hi, I'm Elea Carey, a communications consultant who loves working with public transit agencies. Service changes are a way of life in transit organizations. But what communication strategies and tactics do you need to be thinking of when you're making service changes beyond the norm? For example, when you're launching entirely new service. I keep 3 things in mind when helping transit agencies communicate new service. Begin to announce new service early, but not too early. The sweet spot is about a month in advance of the change. This will allow most people planning time if they need to change their schedules, and it also permits for your marketing to be seen on multiple occasions so it can really sink in. You should also use as many communications channels and tactics as you have the bandwidth to manage. A media relations strategy could capture people who don't follow your social accounts. Highway billboards will announce the new service to drivers you might be able to convert into riders. Finally, don't let your marketing drop off when new service launches. In addition to continuing to communicate in the immediate term after launch, use the first 3 months or so post-change to build ridership. If you'd like to talk more about communicating service additions or anything else related to communications in public transit, look me up on LinkedIn. My first name is spelled E-L-E-A, last name C-A-R-E-Y.
Hi, this is Mike Bismeyer, Regional Sales Director for Terra, and this is Mike's Minute, where we talk about leadership, mentorship, and kindness with the hopes it'll inspire you to pay it forward. As the year comes to an end, it's the annual time for both reflection on the year that was and a look ahead to the new year, and the goals and priorities that many of us may have both personally and professionally. As I reflect on 2022, I do so with a lot of gratitude. I am thankful that the year was somewhat normal in transit after the prior years of the pandemic that none of us will forget. And I'm also grateful to have been part of the transit industry for another year, continuing to learn from my peers, gain many lifelong friends and colleagues, and simply do my best to contribute where I can for the betterment of public transit. I am forever thankful for my family and friends that continue to support me daily and everyone's well-being and health. As I look ahead to 2023 and what will be my 15th year in transit, I simply wanted to say this. Please continue to learn, continue to ask, and continue to contribute. You are all making a difference every day and having an impact that simply can't be measured. Although we know we do our best in trying to measure it with the latest technologies always in transit. Lastly, take some time off, decompress, hug your close ones, and practice some kindness and gratitude. As always, if the chance presents itself over the holidays, please take an opportunity to commit a random act of kindness for someone who might not be in the same position as yourself and an opportunity to change someone's tomorrow. Kindness is cool. Thanks for listening, and best of the season.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged News and Views with our special guest, Mike Bagshaw. Now, next week on Transit Unplugged In Depth, we have Dave McKenna, CEO of the Rocky Mountaineer. Don't forget to visit transitunplugged.com to sign up for the newsletter so you're always in the loop with whatever goes on in the show. If you have a question, comment, or would like to be a guest on the show, feel free to email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.